Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew. And today on Sunday Sharpenings, we are going over, this is a Hootsuls double-sided strap, the rough suede side and the smooth and fairly hard leather on the other side. Both relatively thin. It has a good quality. It's got a little bit of a shine to it with that coloring and stuff, a little bit on top. But we're going to go over something else today. This really isn't about the strap. This strap is to illustrate something else. And that is actually, I'm going to be talking about TechDiamondTools Diamond Compound. You can find this on Amazon for fairly cheap. You can get them in multiple grits and all sorts of other stuff, and they have things on there as far as what these grits mean in microns. If you go on Amazon, you can find it. Just look up TechDiamondTools. I don't have an affiliate link, so you're just going to have to look it up yourself. And there's a couple other things, like when you look at, they come in different concentrations. This one is the high concentration, 50% diamond powder. That is not necessarily the best one. I get it for the simple reason that it's easier to thin. But you got to be careful because the really high grits can settle. This is the 200,000. This is 0.1 microns or less. There's a range for every single one of these. It is not just a single micron thing. Like the 100,000 grit is a quarter micron or less. 8,000 grit, 2 microns or less. And the other one that I'm going to be using today, where did I just put that? Is this it? No, 14,000 grit is 1 micron or less. Here it is. The 5,000 grit, 1.5 to 3 microns is the diamonds in here. Tiny diamonds. This one, as you can see, I have not stirred back up. The oil and the diamonds have separated at the bottom there. Same with this one. And the 100,000, I have stirred up so that the diamonds are more equally distributed throughout the mix. The 5,000, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little bit of separation. See if you can see that. See that? Where's a good one? A little bit lighter gray here, a little bit lighter yellow down the bottom. May not come across on the camera quite as well. But this one has started to separate out a little bit, so I only got about half of it full of diamonds. And you got to be careful because whatever this oil stuff is, it will break down the plunger. So you can see here, there's a lot of that grease stuff. So you got to be careful. I tend to use the higher grit, the 5,000, the 1.5 to 3 micron. It's pretty good. They have a 4,000. That's like that I believe is a 2 to 4 micron. Might even be 3 to 6. But it's right in there. This is a fairly decent cutting. I mean, this is in that 6,000 to 8,000 range. As far as if you think about like other grits and stuff, that since it says 5,000, I'm going to assume that most of it's around the 3 grit. But these are really good. And here's what I want to talk about when it comes to these. Because if you use them like this, they do spread. They can spread pretty well. You don't need a ton of this stuff to really, really get good cutting. But on a smooth strap such as this, I want a lot. And it does spread, but it's not the thinnest, and it doesn't necessarily with all that grit. Can you hear it? That's pretty gritty. This is the 100,000 grit. Right? You can, if it is a little bit, you can thin this out with either mineral oil or something else. I tend to like conditioning oil to thin it out as well as to try and get it uncharged. But I'm just going to keep smoothing this out with my finger here. As you can see, there is enough grease. It's an oil-based stuff, but it tends to work a lot like sort of a conditioning oil or cream. So there's a very charged 0.25 micron or less. Get some grits going the opposite way that I'm going to be dragging the knife, or some lines. All right, so if you have a scratch pattern on a knife or blah, 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 if you're into something like that, I'm kind of doing the same thing here. I want those scratch lines, my goodness, I want those scratch lines to go opposite the diamond. Does it really matter? No, the diamonds are going to cut right either way. But once this dries, once this dries, those are going to be almost like ridges. And as I start using it, it will smooth out, and it'll just give it a little bit of bite, especially on those initial bits. Right? So that is pretty good. I'm going to try see if I can't keep that from doing too much. Now comes the 5,000 grit. This stuff is actually pretty easy to utilize. I have had a lot of good results with this stuff. It's not always the best as far as completeness, but there's almost always some good stuff. And this, I have never had suede that doesn't take at least twice as much charging compound as the smooth sides do. The smooth sides tend to have it sink in. It's why I like the conditioning oils. I smooth this out with my finger. I'm sure there's people who do other things. You can use things like credit cards. I like to smooth out with my finger because it helps me get an idea of how thick it is all over, both visually as well as by feel, and also how gritty it is. This stuff doesn't feel nearly as gritty as the 100K. I can tell you right now. This is smoother. I'm not saying there's not diamonds in here, but because it has already started to separate, I'm assuming it kind of was when I first got it, even though it may not have been visible. So I may have gone down a little bit in my concentration. As you can see, I'm still a little bit short on completeness here. And it's charging up this sueded side here to cut well. And this is really what a lot of people will uncharge charge drops. I rarely do unless they just get really loaded up. And then I use something like mineral oil and a credit card or something that's got a nice solid edge that's both hard and flexible enough to work on things like suede, leather, and all that sort of stuff. And this thing is picking up quick. See if I can get just a little bit more, clear all the stuff off the tip, just the tip. And you can see the 100K is messing up my desktop there where it's not dry yet. So suede gets a little gets charged just a little bit. It's a little bit uneven. It just holds on to this stuff so great. Not upset about a little 100K. Some really small grit contaminating the really large grit. Now what I don't want is really large grit contaminating the really small grit. So a little bit of charge up. And it's a little uneven, but that's okay. You're stroking across the entirety of this. So look at that. It is nicely thick. So there we go. Supercharged top side. There's a lot of people telling me that's too much for here. Look, it's gonna dry out. That grease can soak in. If you're ever worried about it, all you really need to do is use some of that conditioning oil that'll soak in, or you can even heat it up. But this just needs to sit for a little while and it'll dry right out. It does condition the leather a teeny bit. Just a teeny bit. But this stuff is already ridiculously hard. There are some people like, I put it on there and then I just do it. For me, on this one, I charge the strops and then they need to sit for a little while. And what it ends up being, bring some over here. So this is one of the other strops that I have reviewed that is charged with the 1 micron. This is a 1 micron or less, the 14K. Dried, charged just like that. Been used a few times. You can see the color's gone down and it is dried out. This is a Sharpal strop that has the 2 micron and 1.5 to 3 micron, and as you can see, it also does just fine, and you can see where it's been used, and that's starting to get pretty loaded up. That 1.5 to 3 micron cuts really nicely, especially after something like a 1200 or 1000 stone, like on diamonds or anything like that. Then you go from that 9 micron on like the Sharpel to this 1.5 to 3 gives you a really good. You can go straight from like a 1200 to this drop, and then this one. So you go from like a 3 micron to a 2 or less. It's not a big step, but this 1.5 to 3 means there's always good size grits, and this one 2 or less means it's a little bit finer. This is a pretty nice one. If I would do it again, this would be a 1 micron or less, which is why this one is at a 1/4 micron and that sort of thing. But these are, I'm not just trying to do Hootsul strops. I'm trying to give a little bit on the TechDiamondTools, because it's really easy to use. You can get a fair amount for a decent price. It is an American company, though I don't know if they actually get their diamonds from America. Probably don't. If anyone's wondering why I say that, most of the industrial diamonds made today are made in China. They just do it really cheap. They have lots of facilities and they do it cheap. It could be American-made industrial diamonds, but just given the share of market that China rules, it's probably not. It's probably an American company with Chinese diamonds. But that's not untrue of a lot of things. So, is what it is. But with all of the different grits, and you can find these on Amazon in 1, 3, 5, and more packs. I have found the 5-pack or a 3-pack. The 3-pack that I like the best is a 5,000, 14,000, and I think it was a 50,000 or something like that, where it's a 1/2 micron, or it's something like that, 5, 8, and 50 or something. But the one that I have honestly had the best results with is the 5,000, the 14,000. I think it's actually the 5,000, 8,000, 14,000, 50,000, and 100,000. You get everything when you do that. You can find them in multiple. They tell you the grits. Find one that makes you feel better. If you're someone who likes that, 4 to 6 microns, they have that. That's I believe that's their 3,000, their 4,000, or 3,000 grit. They have stuff like that, and you can have. They have progressions all the way down to like whetstone level, like coarse whetstone level in the 20 microns and stuff like that, where you're talking like 500 grit. So you can actually get strops that you sharpen on. But this is just really something that goes a long way. These usually, quite honestly, I have had, I think it's even here. Yes. I have had, the one I've had the longest is I bought a 1/2 micron 50K. 1/2 micron less 50K. This is the oldest one I have. I've used almost it. This has gone bad before I could use it all. I had to buy another 50K. I couldn't use, I just didn't go through the 50K strop. And I strop in my kitchen knives, my pocket knives. I just, even charging an old strop a few times, just ran using this on a buffing wheel. I use this 50K for all sorts of stuff, and I couldn't use it fast enough. That's probably the only thing. You pay for a lot of this. If you want something that spreads easier, that may not settle out so well, get the 1/4, the 25% diamond paste. It's a little bit cheaper. You don't have to thin it out. It's easier for it to dry. It doesn't lay on diamonds quite as thick as the 50%, and it still cuts really good. I bought the 50K or the 50% thinking that I would, get a lot more. The high concentration is nice. Oops. But, sometimes, especially on the lower grits, it's a little thick. Where did it go? The 5,000. As you can see, this one's old too. This is one of my very first ones. And the oil has started to break down some of the plunger since in these last uses. The rubber on that plunger has started to break down just a teeny bit. So there is that. Can you use it? I often use it to recharge some of these others. Without even taking it off, you can just literally creamy smooth. You can literally just add it on there and charge up some of these areas. So TechDiamondTools, very, very easy to use. Very consistent. They do seem to warehouse a lot of stock so that you may get some older stuff that has, as you've seen in mine, has separated out just a little bit. You can see the gray and yellow really good, as opposed to having mixed it up. Now what I have done to mix it up is I pull the plunger out and the tip, depending on which way I'm going to be doing it. Usually I pull the plunger out first, and I use an unbent paper clip to just go in there and stir it up and move it around. It worked really, really good, quite honestly. It was very effective in that particular way. So I just recharging the Sharp House drop here. That'll dry out. Re-emulsify some of those diamonds that are already in there, as well as the other stuff, and now 24 hours or so, this will dry out. Is it greasy? Yes, but it also means that the leather doesn't tend to dry out with this stuff. I'm not saying it's all conditioning, but it tends to keep the leather from drying out and getting hard, which for me is cool. That's a really good one. So, the 8,000 tends to need less, 5,000 tends to need more, is what it is. But I wanted to have this conversation because there's been a few things, and when it comes to strops, there's a lot of emulsifiers. Like you get the spray emulsifiers that are like a 0.5 micron or something like that, or 1 micron or whatnot. I actually haven't tried those. I tried these pretty well, and I've had really good results from it. The DMT stuff is a little bit more expensive, the like Diapaste. But with the Diapaste, you can't tell if it's settled out, and they don't tell you the concentration. So I like that you can get TechDiamondTools. This came from a particular one that was 50%. It doesn't look like 50% by volume, right? But it definitely is, I would bet 50% by weight, given this is like a liquid cream and this is basically diamonds. So yeah, from the looks of this, the diamonds are about 2 to 3 times as dense or massive as the cream, and that's probably about right. So again, 100,000 grit, 0.25 microns or less. What's this one here? 1 micron or less, 2 microns or less, and somewhere around here, there it is. The superfine, 1/10 of a micron or less. That's 100 nanometers. I don't know if you noticed, but since it's by weight, look at how this is supposed to be the 50% concentration, but look at how dense all of those 100 nanometer diamonds are. There's a lot packed into that tiny. The bigger they are, the more space there is in between. The smaller they are, the tighter they can pack. That's a dense amount of diamonds right there that I haven't spread throughout the rest. But it's also one of the most fine, it's probably the finest paste they have. And that is 100 nanometers is ridiculous. That is smaller than mini light wavelengths. And I want to just, when you start talking about things like red light being 400 nanometers and stuff like that, like I want you to understand, that's 0.4 microns. 1,000 nanometers equals 1 micron. So yeah, you're talking about very, very small pieces that are just going to really refine that edge, really just shine it up. You're going to get a very shiny top. You can't, it's not going to remove a ton of material, so you really want to get into those high grits. But once you do, this is ridiculous. This is so crazy ridiculous on its grit level. And even though there's a large gap in many of them, as far as the grit, and again, these may not be Chinese, they could be coming from somewhere else, because the way they do the grit, where it kind of is like 0.25 or less, 3 mic, the 5,000 grit or whatever is like 3 to 1.5, but it's 5,000 is right around 3. So they gauge the grit by the largest particles. That's a interesting way to do it, and it is more like how the FP grits, like European and like Russian style grits, work. So there's a lot to unpack there. But it's at least honest in their grit. They rate the grit by the largest particle in the sieve. And that's pretty easy to deal with. When you're looking at a 5,000, you know that the grit is probably around 3 microns down to as small as 1.5. It's not grit contamination. It is just the spread that they have where their sieve allows a certain amount. Some may call it low quality control, but at least they know what it is. It's not like a Shapton Waterstone where they tell you the grit number and then they say, hey, all of these are, when it's like a 25.74 micron, and they tell you it's within it, all of the particles are within like a 10th or a 100th of a micron when it comes to like, say, Shapton glass stone or stuff like that. So very, very narrow bandwidth. TechDiamondTools doesn't necessarily do that. They have a fairly wide gap of all the different grits, and they tell you that. They don't hide it and say like, oh, it's all going to be this one, it's going to be that. There's a range of grits that fall within that, just like every other grit rating. So it's not necessarily grit contamination. It's something that's going to be like within 50 to 10 to 50%, depending upon what you're looking at and all that sort of stuff. But it's really, really good. I don't want to take too long on this. This is already a pretty long one on the TechDiamondTools, but this is the paste I use. You can get it from Amazon. It's relatively inexpensive. It is a United States company, even if they source from overseas maybe. But it's a pretty decent amount. Like this 14,000 grit, this 1 micron or less, that's a lot of diamonds in there. So it's pretty good. You can get a lot of value for your money, and in my experience, in my use case, I can't use this stuff fast enough. There's actually just so much here, I literally can't use it fast enough. So it starts to degrade the rubber and everything else that's in this plunger before I can get through it all. So there we go. That's where I'm gonna. This Sunday Sharpenings is just a brand spotlight. I'm going to be doing more of these brand spotlights just to go through certain things, like where you have multiple things instead of individual reviews. I'm going to try and review some of the brands that I use if I use more than one item from it, and kind of give a brand overview. And TechDiamondTools, you can find it out on Amazon. Just put it in the search bar, TechDiamondTools, and you'll get a significant amount of results. And you can pick what you want. You can get a dozen different grits from 500 to 100,000 or whatever. You can find all sorts of stuff. Highly, highly recommended. I've had really good experience with this. The single biggest problem is that diamonds settle out of the cream and oil. It's an oil-based deal, and things settle out of the matrix. Does it matter? Not so much. Like, I haven't used very much of this 14,000 yet, but because I went through the other one and it kind of hardened, and the plunger got all ate up. So the rubber was actually gone on the other, so I had to buy a new one. The 50K is in the same boat, and my 5K, it needs to be replaced. So I've been using these for a couple years now on all my strops. I found these early at a relatively inexpensive price, and I haven't looked back or really gone another, and simply because it doesn't behoove me to buy more. I've got these, I can't use these fast enough, so I don't have a lot of reason to buy different brands. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't for, say, like a review or something like that, but just for personal use, I found a good brand, and I have no reason to buy other stuff. These work pretty good. But I'm going to end it right there, because this has just been a quick overview. TechDiamondTools. It works really good. It does require you to wait and allow things to dry, allow the oil to seep into the leather to really give it some sort of grip and anchoring in there. It comes pretty creamy and greasy, and it will just kind of soak into the leather over time and give you a little bit of extra. Just a little bit of extra, to be perfectly honest, for lack of another term. You just get that little bit more. So I'm going to end it there. This has been TechDiamondTools. Again, I like this one. My personal favorite to use is the 5K, the 1.5 to 3 microns, and then either the 14K or the 50K. Those are my personal favorites, but I'm trying the 100,000. As you just saw, I'm trying the 100,000 and the 5,000 to go from about 3 to about a quarter. So by a factor of about 10 or so. But, all right, I'm going to end it right there, you guys. This has been the TechDiamondTools review, Sunday sharpening, strop loading, and the diamond paste. So I use TechDiamondTools. I know there's Dia paste and there's a lot of other ones. And comment below if you use something else other than like the DMT or the tell me if you use emulsions. Do you use paste? Go ahead, go down in the comments and tell me what kind of stuff you use to charge your strops. Because I'm not a big, like this Hutzels one that I just unboxed him, comes with both a green and a white, where the green is fine and the white is ultra fine. The white is the finer of the two. So I tend not to use pastes anymore because there's absolutely no reason to not use diamond when I can't even get through a whole tube. So yeah, that might be something that you want to look into. I definitely highly recommend these at the 5 grams, the 5 milliliters, 5 gram load. It is a ton of paste. If you have a bunch of strops, you can do it. If you sharpen a lot of tools, you can go through this pretty good if you charge strops and uncharge them fairly often when they load up. Other than that, I've had great results and I highly recommend it. So check these out. And in the meantime, go ahead, take this video, watch it twice. Comment as much as you like. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your Dose of Drew. I am said Drew. And you guys have a great rest of your night.